Wagwan geezer, what you saying, Maggie? Just kidding. Could you imagine? I never know how to start these videos, but I think that will do. Right, let's get into it. Right, today we're going to be changing the clutch on my 2005 MG ZT diesel because at the minute it's currently doing this. Right, it's slipping real bad in like third, fourth and fifth gear at the sort of peak power of the rev range. So I'm having to drive it like real gently. We're waiting to get this done for like 2 months, but it just hasn't stopped raining. So but today we've finally actually got a good clear day. The rain's supposed to hold off. So we're going to try and get it done in 1 day. It's going to be quite a learning experience because I've actually never done a clutch replacement before. I mean, I've done some other bigger jobs. Like the biggest one I did is when the cam belt failed and my wife's Cougar just sitting back there. So that was, you know, sort of almost like a top end rebuild up to replace like the cam, rocker arms and actually time it and put a new cam belt on and everything. But I've never actually tried tackling a clutch on any cars. On this one, there's supposed to be a little bit of a headache. But I've actually got 2 of these. So I've got this one and then I've got one just behind the camera there. They're both diesels, both manual. So with these cars, the clutch is a bit of a weak point. So I thought it'd be good to actually give it a go myself and actually learn how to do it because this could become a bit of a common problem. Yeah, they have been known to eat through clutches. I mean, this one, I think, is actually on its 4th clutch at the moment. So when I put the new one in, that will be clutch number 5. And it's a bit disappointing because the current clutch didn't actually last that long. So I've got the receipt here from the last time it was done by the previous owner. And he paid a lot of money to get all of this done because he's got a few other couple of jobs on here. But he did the clutch. He did the flywheel, the slave, he has some gear linkage cables done, a new gearbox mount, and everything with the labour came out to like £1,400. And if you look on the receipt, it was done at 154,841 miles there. And if you have a look at what mileage the car is on right now, quickly pop that on. Yeah, it's now on 196,568 miles. So the current clutch has only managed about 40,000 miles in 8 years. So that is pretty poor if you're going to be changing them maybe 40,000 miles. But what will be interesting is what clutch was actually fitted to it. Because that's the only thing the receipt doesn't say is what brand was fitted. And some brands can be a bit rubbish really, whereas some of the other ones are a bit better. But the thing is, it's not always guaranteed that the clutches are going to fail quickly. I mean, the blue one here behind me, that one actually managed 191,000 miles on the original clutch kit. Everything was all original before it finally went. So they can last. But yeah, with this one, we reckon and we're hoping it's just a worn clutch plate causing the problem. Because like I said earlier, it slips in 3rd, 4th and 5th gear under sort of peak power. But for the first sort of 20 minutes of the journey, it generally is okay. It doesn't slip. It's starting to do it now as it's getting even worse. But it isn't until sort of the gearbox and the clutch get a lot warmer where then the problem starts kicking in and it gets pretty bad. We don't think it's going to be like a leak in slave or some sort of, you know, leak inside the gearbox, because if the clutch was contaminated it would just probably slip all the time. But I'm just hoping it's not the flywheel that's worn, because that's a more expensive one and I'd rather just change the clutch rather than change the flywheel. But we'll get it apart and we'll have a look and see what's going on. I do like giving these sort of jobs a go myself just to see if I can do them. I do like the challenge, but normally I'd use like a video that somebody else has done and you sort of follow those sort of instructions to know what I'm doing. But with this job, I couldn't really find a real good clear step-by-step video from start to finish on how to get this job done. So I thought I'd make this one for anyone else that wants to do this sort of thing. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, I've never done this job before, so I'm just going off of all the information I could find on how to do it, what to take apart, how, you know, any guidance. So if there's anything I sort of missed or something that can be done better, just sort of drop it in the comments below and hopefully we can make up a good guide that others can follow to get this done. But before we get started, there's one more important job I need to get done on this first, so let's get into it. worse than working on a car when it's just absolutely filthy. At least now when I've got to get the wheels off and things, my hands won't get all mucked up. Also, in terms of what clutch kit I'm fitting, so I asked around at what's considered as the best or most reliable clutch to fit at the moment. One that was mostly recommended was the Ball & Beck clutch kit. However, one mechanic that does loads and loads of clutches, he actually swears by the Blueprint clutch kit. But what he recommended, so he recommended to go for the Blueprint actual clutch kit here. So you see here it says, there we go, Blueprint. But he said don't fit their slave. He said their slave's okay, but it's, you know, can be slightly weak. There's better ones out there. So he recommended going for the OEM Q slave option from Discount Engine Rover Spares. So that's what I'll be fitting. So the clutch kit will be Blueprint, but the slave will be from Discount Engine Rover Spares. Hopefully that kit option will last a lot longer than the last one did, but it'd be interesting to see what's actually fitted to this when we remove it. Just a quick run through of everything that's got to come off to get access to the clutch. So on the top side, the battery has got to come out and the battery box. The fuel filter's got to be removed. If you've got an earlier car with the underbody fuel pump, that's also got to be moved out of the way. Then we've got to get it lifted up, put it on axle stands. That wall's got to come off. We've got the steering rack undone and shifted out of the way. The wishbone arms have got to be unbolted. The drop link's got to be unbolted. Bottom engine mount, that's got to be undone. We've got to undo the gearbox mount. We shouldn't be able to get the subframe out at that point. The exhaust manifold, downpipe, the 3 bolts, that's also got to be undone to get that out of the way to be able to get the subframe out. It's probably a few other bits, so we'll see what else we've got to get undone along the way. First thing to do, actually, if you've got electric seats, then because we've got to remove the battery, remember to move your seat all the way back. Reason being is, one, if you're replacing the master cylinder, that's sort of up behind here, so you're going to need the access. Also for me, I'm not replacing that today, but if I need to top up the clutch fluid, I'm going to need to get in there. So remember to move this back, otherwise you're just not going to give yourself enough room. So right, let's get started. So I started off by removing the battery, which then gave access to the bolts that hold the battery box in place. The fuel filter housing also secured to the side of the battery box, so you'll also need to remove this at the same time. I then removed the engine cover to get that out of the way, and also unbolted the air intake, which I'll be fully removing later on. Right, now that these bits are out of the way, the next thing to do is we need to disconnect the gear linkage cables. You've got one there, and the second one's just there. Apparently, with a 13mm spanner, if you just put it in there, it should just pop off. Let's see how easy it actually is to do that. Oh, there we go, look at that. That's one off. And now for the second one, a bit more of an awkward angle. Oh, is that it? There we go, that one's off as well. Right, now that those are out, the next thing to do is these sort of spring clips here need to be squeezed to pop these cables out from the mount here, because this mount is actually part of the gearbox, so we need to disconnect these down here as well. Right, now that the gear linkage cables are off, so they've come off of here and they're just sitting up here out of the way, next thing I'm going to do while the car's still on the ground is just loosen off this gearbox mount bolt just to make sure I can get it undone before I lift the car up. The bolt actually came undone pretty easily with just a socket and a bar over the top just for a little more leverage, but you only want to loosen it off at this point. You don't want to take it out completely. Now we're nearly at the point of getting the car up in the air, but first you'll want to loosen off the wheel bolts with both front wheels while they're still on the ground. Next, you'll need to jack up the front of the car and get it onto axle stands, which are put under the jack points. The important thing here is to ensure you raise the car up high enough so the gearbox can make it out from underneath. And remember, to get the gearbox out, you'll probably have it sitting on a jack, so just make sure you give yourself that extra bit of room. Next, you can roll out a bit of premium carpet for comfort and get under there and get that under tray off. Next, you want to get the front wheels off and get that passenger side plastic wheel arch liner out, which is just held in with some plastic rivet fasteners, and disconnect the ABS sensor. Right, now the wheel arch liner's out, the next thing to do is to start getting things undone so we can drop the subframe. So the first thing to do is to unbolt this drop link here, and we've got to undo the track rod arm, which is just here, and then the bottom bolt there for the wishbone arm. Got to do it on this side and also the other side. Luckily for me, I'm actually not doing this job alone today. My father-in-law has kindly volunteered to come up and give me a hand with this, which will not only come in handy to have a second pair of hands when it comes to removing the subframe and especially getting the gearbox out and then getting that back in, but he's also had a lot of experience doing these sort of mechanical jobs over the years, like rebuilding classic minis on the driveway back in the day, so it would just be handy to have that extra bit of knowledge just to lean back on if I get stuck at any point. Right, releasing this bottom ball joint turned out to be a bit of a nightmare. Just didn't want to come out, so I've never actually had one of these off before. So what I've had to do is just jack this up on a piece of wood so it don't damage the disc, so it takes the weight off of it. And then literally had to knock it down from here, knock it from the sides, and it eventually came out. I mean, even the ball joint puller didn't want to get that out of there. Once you're done struggling with one side, you can then move on to struggling with the other side as well. Right, last bit is to disconnect to get the subframe out. So you've got, there's 2 pipe clamps. You've got one here, and then there's one just there, that little bolt there. They've got to be undone. Then you got the engine mount, that will need to be removed. So we just undo it from up here. We'll check the condition of that while it's off. And then those 3 nuts on the downpipe, they've got to be undone. Then we just remove the exhaust rubbers just there past the cat, and then that should allow the exhaust to drop down enough to give the clearance to get the subframe out. So just notice there's also this little bracket here to remove, which is holding the bottom coolant hose to the subframe, so you just got to take this one off as well. So let's crack on and get these bits off. The bottom engine mount is just held in place with 2 bolts, and once you've removed the 3 nuts from the exhaust downpipe, the exhaust will start to lower down. Right, I've managed to get the nuts off for the downpipe down there, but to get the exhaust to actually drop down far enough to clear the subframe, these cross braces here and here also need to be taken off. They've just got 4 10mm bolts in each, so they just come off pretty easily. Right, now that the exhaust is down, the last thing to undo up here is the steering rack bolts, because they're bolted to the subframe. So I'm going to need to undo these bolts, and I'm just going to need to work out a way to secure this up, maybe with some rope or cable ties, or find something to tie it to, just to hold it up there so it doesn't just drop down when I remove the subframe. Right, we're at the point now where we can start unbolting the subframe. Now, because of how heavy it is and because it's a wide frame, the easiest way I've seen to do this online is you get yourself a nice thick bit of board like that, drill yourself 2 holes in it 61 centimeters apart, and then underneath here I believe you bolt that board through this hole here and that hole there, which is where the under tray fixings normally go. So once you bolt it to these 2, you can then put a jack under the center of the board, and that can actually take the whole weight of the subframe and get it out in one go. So whilst I was bolting the board to the subframe, we did have a slight incident. Oh shit, the exhaust just fell down. Yeah, I don't know if both the rubbers just broke at the back. Anyway, moving on. So after removing the 6 bolts that secure the subframe to the body of the car, we'll have to slowly drop it down and get it out from underneath, which will now give us access to get to the gearbox. Right, the subframe is out, but we're going to have to call it a day there. Unfortunately, trying to do this in one day was way too ambitious by the looks of things. We just had too many bolts that just would be a nightmare to come out. The bottom arm ball joints didn't want to come out, and we're filming this as well, obviously that's adding on time, so it's going to become a 2-day job now. But yeah, we'll get back on it in the morning. Okay, so now we're on to day 2 of the get the clutch changed in 1 day challenge. Let's get to it. So last night we finished off by removing the subframe from the car, and here's a better look at how the board looks when attached to the subframe. This made dropping the subframe so much easier, so shout out to whoever came up with this method. So the first job to do now is to drain out the gearbox oil. So gearbox oil drain plug location, that is located just here. It's this one here. So we're going to pop that one out to empty out the gearbox oil. When it comes to refilling, put this one back in, and then you undo this one. That's where you refill from, and you fill it until it starts to seep out of here. That's how you know you fill to the right level. Oh, and just remember to do this on a windy day so the oil blows past the pan and just goes over your driveway. Once the gearbox oil is drained, the next job is to get the drive shafts out on both sides. So these are just sort of pushed into here, and they have like a sort of like a spring retaining clip in there. So all you have to do is you just have to pry them out. So they are in there a little bit firm. All I did was just get a pry bar in there, and you can see it's already starting to come out there. The other side, we're just going to be undoing the bolts just up here. That should give enough room to maneuver that drive shaft to get it out of the gearbox, so you don't actually need to remove the hub bolts. You can leave them in, there's enough room to still get the shafts out. Now the drive shaft's out, I've just tied it up just up here just to keep the weight off of it, otherwise it hangs right down and I don't want to damage this end of it. Next I've got to unbolt the starter motor, which has got 2 bolts. You've got a bolt and a nut at the bottom just down here, and then there's a second bolt which is located, a little bit difficult to see, just behind here. Just go straight through into the starter motor. So we'll get those 2 unbolted. Then I'm going to go around and start loosening all the bolts on the gearbox before I take off the engine mount bolt. I'm not going to take the gearbox bolts out completely at this point. I just want to make sure I can actually get them to crack open before I unbolt the engine mount. Right now, so I've slackened off all of the gearbox bolts, so there's actually 6 of them going around the gearbox, plus a 10mm one that goes into a metal bracket. So I've slackened them all off all around. The hardest one to get to are the 2 on top, the rest of them are actually pretty easy to get to. Next we've just got to disconnect this hydraulic line for the slave cylinder, and then we can get the engine mount undone. Okay, I think we just found what part of the job was going to be an absolute nightmare. I just had an absolute mare trying to get the slave cylinder connection to come apart. So this connection here is what you've got to separate, and it has this stupid little tab design where you basically got to get this tab to push in, which then pushes, if you look on the new one, it pushes those tabs in to release the connector. But whoever fitted this before, it seems like they'd connected it and then pinched it, like the metal was dented in along this side where I've cut it, and it just would not release. And it's just where it's, you know, with age the plastic just goes brittle, and that just wanted to keep breaking literally straight away. I've had to get a hacksaw out and then cut into there, and luckily I was able to actually pull most of the teeth out to release the connection. But what a nightmare. It's always those little 10-second release the connector jobs that just turn out to be an absolute nightmare. Right, we're now at the point where we can remove the gearbox mount, but we will need to support the weight of the engine on a jack. Then you'll need to remove the large bolt that goes through the gearbox mount, and then you'll have to remove the gearbox mount bracket from the gearbox itself, which is only held in with 4 bolts. Next, with the gearbox supporter, you can remove all the gearbox bolts. Now, ideally to drop the gearbox down, you need to use an engine hoist. I don't have one of those, so we're just using the trusty bit of 4x2 ratchet straps and thoughts and prayers. Yeah, a bit sketchy, but it got the job done. Alright, the gearbox is finally out. Now we can see in here to check what the slave was like. For some reason it's come apart. I don't know if that's normal or not, doesn't look like it. And now we can get into the clutch and start getting that out. One good bit of news is the flywheel seems to be okay, because it just has that normal small bit of play in there. Play's not excessive, so hopefully the flywheel's all good. Now we can get in there, remove the hex bolts for the old pressure plate and get the old clutch kit off. Right, I think that's all the bolts, so moment of truth. Let's see what clutch kit has been fitted in here. So here we go, the clutch plate is out, and the brand is Schaeffler. Not one I've actually heard of before, but looking out they're supposed to be really good, but then again they do also own LUK, and I think the LUK clutch plates, if I remember rightly, were considered not as good as they used to be for these cars. But looking at it, it's not as worn as I thought it would be. I mean, there isn't much lip left on there. It is getting close to the rivet, so I don't know. I mean, would that be enough to start causing clutch slip, having that much wear on there? I mean, if you compare it to the new one, it's got a lot more meat on there. So yeah, hopefully that was the cause. The good news is under here the flywheel looks good, so there's very minimal play in there, just what you sort of expect. Yeah, it looks all good. Just needs a clean up with some brake cleaner, and then we'll score this up a bit, because this, where it's been slipping, it's gone quite smooth, so we'll need to score that up to make sure it gets the best grip against the clutch plate. So we gave the flywheel a good clean and wipe with some brake cleaner. To score the surface of the flywheel, we just used a bit of sandpaper. I can't remember exactly what I used. I think it must have been about 120 grit. But I didn't go crazy on it, so I wasn't sure if I could actually damage the flywheel by over sanding it. I don't know if that's actually a thing and if that's actually possible. But we just did it enough just to take the smoothness out of the surface. Right, now it's time to put the new clutch in, and I need to make sure that the clutch plate lines up perfectly with the pressure plate. Some people can do this by eye, but what I'm going to use is one of these clutch alignment tools. They're pretty simple to use. You just the way they work is this part goes through here, so you have to have the clutch plate facing with the gearbox side up, so it says there gearbox side. Have that facing upwards. Place your pressure plate over the top like that. So this metal rod part here is going to go through into the center, and then what you do is you tighten this back side up, and as that tightens up, that's going to pull the rod into here, which expands the plastic section, which locks it into the splines in the middle. Once you've locked that in, you then tighten this up against the pressure plate, and that is going to align your clutch plate with the pressure plate. So I'll just do that now so you can see how that looks. So once you've tightened that up enough, you'll be able to actually lift all this like that, and it won't back out. And if you check the other side, you'll see that it's nice and flush there, nice and tight. And there you go, the clutch is now lined up and it's ready to go in. Now we can position the clutch kit and get the bolts back in. When you're torquing up these bolts, you're going to want to do them in like a sort of star pattern, just to make sure the clutch kit goes in straight. And once it's all tightened up, we can remove that alignment tool. Next up, we'll need to remove that old slave cylinder and whip in the new one. And we'll also need to apply a little bit of grease to the input shaft splines. Now it's important to not go overkill on the grease, because if you put too much on there, when the shaft spins with the gearbox, it can flick the grease everywhere and that can contaminate the clutch. So you only want to put a little bit of grease on the splines. Now we can get that gearbox back in using that same redneck timber and ratchet strap method. I really recommend you get an engine hoist for this, because it was actually really difficult to line up the gearbox using this method. But man's got to work with what he's got. And did we bitch about how hard it was doing it this way? Of course we did, but we got the job done. With the gearbox back in place, we can now get the gearbox mount back on and get the drive shafts back in, which simply just push back into the gearbox. And remember to fit the bolts back in for the offside drive shaft mount. With the drive shafts back in, we can now refill the gearbox with the correct NTF 94 gearbox oil via the filling plug I showed you guys earlier. Getting access to the gearbox to fill it is a bit of a pain, but we just used a funnel with like a long tube, and I just held the tube into the gearbox while my father-in-law just slowly poured the fluid into the funnel. Because you know, teamwork makes the dream work and all that. Well, it looks like my 1 day clutch change has turned into a 3 day clutch change. We just ran out of time today now. As you can see, it's just gone dark. It's one thing I hate about doing these sort of jobs in the winter. You just have to cut your days short. But we just had so many issues today. I mean, the first big problem was trying to get that, the slaves and the connection, the hydraulic connection apart. I just wasted like over an hour just trying to get that come undone. And then trying to get trying to get the gearbox off wasn't too bad. I mean, it was difficult because we didn't have like an engine hoist. So I was going to do this again. I'd definitely get an engine hoist, but trying to get it back on, oh my god, that was a nightmare again. That just wasted ages, and just the bolt access like was at the top end of the bell housing was just absolute nightmare. Once we had that wood on top with the ratchet strap to lift, to take the weight of the gearbox, we just couldn't get to the bolts at the top, so we had a right nightmare. But good thing is the gearbox is back in, the gearbox oil has been topped up, the drive shafts are back in. So one headache job tomorrow is I've got to bleed the clutch, because I've just tried the clutch pedal, when it does just go straight down, which was expected anyway. So that's going to need to be done tomorrow. And yeah, so the first thing of all tomorrow morning, I'll get the subframe on, get all the wheel connections, all the suspension connections, that back on, get the steering rack back in place, any of the little pipe brackets and things like that were on the subframe, get all of them back on, and hopefully get the car back on the ground. And then I'll have to push it over a little bit, because I need a bit more room to get into the master cylinder to top up the fluid there. But hopefully, day number 3 tomorrow, hopefully we'll get it finished. Right, it's now day 3. The first job today is to get the subframe back in, so let's get on it. So we kicked off the day by lining up the subframe and then raising it into position, and then just bolting it back in place. Easy peasy, squeezy lemons. Next up, we've got the steering rack bolted back in place, which means we can now get all the wheel connections back on. Now at the hub, we can get the bottom arm connection, the trap rod off, and the drop link bolted out. One thing to look at here when we're putting putting the subframe back in is, as you load the subframe up, make sure the pinch bolt on the bottom arm line up with the hub. So you can get this all bolted up on both sides and then get that wheel arch liner back in. Now I've just got to slap that engine mount back in and get that exhaust down pipe bolted back up. And those two cross braces removed further down to allow the exhaust to drop down far enough they can go back on as well. Last couple of things before I can drop the car back down is get the wheels back on and get the under tray fitted. Right, we're almost there. So at this point I opted to bleed the clutch before I put the battery box and everything back in, because the bleed nipple for the clutch hydraulics is located just here, which is part of the save cylinder that we installed. So I opted to not put the battery box and everything back in first because it will get in the way of all of this. I've never bled a clutch before, but for real, like, how hard can it be?
One eternity later.
So I've actually bled the clutch system already. I didn't get a chance to film it because it was stressing me out quite a bit, because it started to make me think I'd actually done something wrong. So as I said earlier, the clutch pedal just went to the floor, and even after quite a bit of bleeding, I was just not getting any sort of resistance in the clutch pedal. But you just have to persevere. So it took a lot of bleeding, a lot of then slow pumps of the clutch pedal, then more bleeding, and just recycling that process until I got the clutch pedal right up with full resistance all the way through it. So filling the system with clutch fluid and bleeding was a bit of a pain. I mean, ideally it'd be good if you got a second person to help you out with it, but I managed to do it by myself. So I'll show you how I did it. So to top up the clutch fluid, and it just takes the normal .4 brake and clutch fluid, the master cylinder is located right up there. I'll probably show a picture of it because it'll be easier to show you unless I can see it. If I can get it focusing on there. See that black bottle just above the master cylinder with the clear cap on top? So that's where you fill the clutch fluid. It is an absolute nightmare to get to. You will scratch up your hands and everything trying to fill it up. And the way I did it was I literally had to use the bottle cap off of here, fill a bit of brake fluid, clutch fluid into there, like half the cap, and then pour that into there. The good thing is that cylinder doesn't actually take much to fill it up. So literally about a couple of half cap fulls at a time, and that was enough in there. And then I had to press the clutch pedal fully down and then hold it in place with, I mean, anything you can find that will hold it. So I got a table leg and a bit of wood in there against the seat frame, and that held the clutch fully down. And whilst that was down, we come round over to the bleed nipple and just open it for probably about 3 to 5 seconds and then close it. I've got like a easy bleed kit, so with a pipe I could just put on the end of there into a bottle, so to collect the clutch fluid coming out of this side. And then the process I followed, I mean, I don't know if it's the 100% right way of doing it, but I had to bleed it probably about 5-6 times initially, and then I went with just slowly pumping the clutch pedal by hand, taking about 5 seconds to depress it all the way down, then 5 seconds to bring it back up. And I've done that probably a good 20 times, and then I just started to feel a bit of resistance at the bottom of the clutch pedal, and then it was just a matter of just repeating that cycle. So then I'd top up the master cylinder again. I then bleed it probably maybe twice, maybe 3 times in a row, and then I'd go back to doing the 20 to 30 strokes of the clutch pedal, 5 seconds down, 5 seconds up each time. And I literally had to do that probably about 6, 7, 8 cycles maybe. And you started to feel the clutch pedal get more and more resistance higher up the pedal, and then eventually it started to feel like how it should. So it is a long process. It did have me nervous, thinking I'd done something wrong, but no, you just have to be patient. It takes a while, but yeah, just keep with it. There is a couple of other options. People did talk about reverse bleeding, where you force clutch fluid up from the bleed nipple side. I did try that, but I just couldn't get any of the fluid to go through there. It just literally just fired the hose off and just literally just spat out brake fluid and clutch fluid all over my engine bay. But yeah, just persevere with it, and you'll get there in the end. So now I just need to put the battery box back in, secure a couple of hoses, get this fuel filter secured back in place over here, get the air intake back on and the engine cover back on, and then we're good to take it on a test run. Right, this is it, the big moment. Let's see if it runs. Let's see if I've done the clutch right. Well, so far so good. No bad noises or anything. Right, let's see. Do I get a gear? Let's try forwards first. Yes. Right, looks like we're good. Reverse. Yep, going into the gears. Fine. Ah, brilliant. I was so worried about this after how much of a headache it was to bleed the clutch that I might have done something wrong, but this is all working fine. I actually can't believe how light this new clutch is. You don't realize how heavy it goes over time gradually. This is like feather light. There's literally no weight behind the clutch pedal. So this is a massive improvement. Right, let's take it on a proper test run, just make sure everything's all good. One other job I did while I had a lot of components apart was I replaced the top engine mount and the hydro mount. That would be for another video on the channel. But the issue I was getting was really bad vibration through the steering wheel, and when I was if I was turning at full lock, especially when I was pulling, like reversing off the driveway at full lock, you'd hear like a clunk. It almost sounded like a suspension noise, but I had all the suspension and everything checked over, that was all fine. It turns out I think it was actually the hydro mount causing the issue, and now I've got absolutely no knocks or anything like that at all. So fingers crossed, it seems like I've solved that issue as well. Oh, this clutch pedal is just so light now. It actually feels bizarre driving it with such a light clutch pedal. I mean, any of you that own the diesel 75ZT, you probably know how heavy the clutch pedal can be, but this literally has no weight to it. Right, let's see if I'll get any slipping like I was before. So let's stick it in third, just below 30 at peak rev, peak power range, see if it slips. No, nothing there, so that's a good sign. Alright, let's try fourth. We used to always slip in fourth gear, so let's see if the problem's now okay. Oh, that is pulling well now, no slipping. Absolutely fantastic. Oh, I'm so glad it's all gone well. I mean, having never done a clutch before, there's always that worry, like if I've not done something right, or maybe if that was a problem. I say if the flywheel was actually dew worn as well and I hadn't noticed, but no, it's all gone well. Took longer than I thought it would, but first time doing a clutch, I've had a lot to learn now, and I'm so glad that it's gone well and it's all working now. It's so nice to be able to drive this car properly again. There had been a good couple of months that I hadn't really been able to use the car because of the issue with the clutch. But yeah, I'm so glad. It'll be the worst thing now if I've got this far, this much time, and there's still an issue there. So guys, she's fixed. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. If you can, just drop a comment in below. Any engagement will really help the channel out. And I hope you did find the video useful. I mean, even if it just helps one person out to get this job done, it makes it all worth it. So guys, I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.